Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and other people. All right, we're back at things for session 7 of Aldara. All right, so touching back on, let's circle back to that whole theological complex conversation for a minute. You cannot stand at the apex of theology unless you understand a few core concepts like um, God did not create men, men created gods. Um, And you can take a look at that from the development of animism and environmental factors and storm gods and city gods that evolved into polytheism and then monotheism and all of that stuff. Man created gods. So if you want God to reach out and touch you, much like any tree, you have to plant it. You have to plant that God. You have to plant that conversation with God, whatever form it will take with you. Maybe there will be multiple in your mind for people who live in a polytheistic area or understanding. You've got to create, and that's why we teach theology to children. Is you've got to plant that seed when the children are young, and the theology is important because it opens up. It was early philosophy. It's a way for understanding, and philosophy is a way of thinking. If philosophy teaches you critical thinking skills, theology teaches you to apply those to the universe. When you look at the stars and think of galaxies and shit like that, God will never just reach out and touch you, and anybody telling you that is selling you a false bill of goods. That conversation has to start within you at a very young age, and you have to create those archetypes in your mind. And you have to, much like any scaffolding and building, you have to, or let's take a look at a tree. A redwood tree is tall and mighty and proud. It will stand for centuries because it has had to endure time to grow from a seedling to something that may stand 100 feet tall or more. Um, Anybody selling you a fully grown, quote unquote, redwood tree for some money or some obedience or servitude, they're lying to you. They want to force you into a position that's going to put you subservient to them. If you really want to have a talk with God, then you've got to grow a tree. You've got to grow that conversation within you. And it takes years. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to start with your children, but you have to start somewhere. As Cicero quoted, Omnium rerum principia parva sunt. The beginning of all things is small, even your conversation with God. Um, so, from that point forward, let's take a look at things here. Like anybody telling you, caveat emptor, even in matters of heaven. I believe heaven is real. I believe ancestors are real. I believe in the veil. I believe in piercing the veil. I believe in the seven rivers, Styx, and the others. Charon will take his toll. That's your soul. The underworld exists. It's separate from hell. Um, complex, complex concepts can be understood and distilled into easily digestible packets of language and mnemonic transfer. As Einstein said, it doesn't matter how exciting and how interesting your ideas are, if you cannot package that into a 30-second um, understanding for people, then like your knowledge is academic and you haven't fully fleshed out what you really need to do. Like all of these smart people just saying, like, I have no emotions and all the rest of this shit because I'm smart. Well, you're really just lazy. Let's just be honest with each other. Like, I'm fucking just as smart as you are. And I have emotions. I have emotional regulation problems because I've got arguments with gods transpiring in my mind that are decades old and will be there for decades. So that's not just any type of Abrahamic God. I'm just talking like big old God and gods and other gods and gods upon gods. Gods with a little g and animal gods and animism and storm gods and city gods and like a 3,000-year-old. I live in a 3,000-year-old fucking burial place right now in fucking Ottawa. This is ancient land. Spirits are here. I hear them, speak to them, smoke joints with them, set up little campsites and little fire pits in the forest and set a little campfire up and I'll set multiple spaces around the campfire, grab some rocks and set them down around the fire pit and leave them for the spirits while I sit there and smoke my joint. I've done that. And you know, yeah, yeah, yeah. And the First Nations understanding of the spirits stuff is far more along the lines like the Gaelic understanding. That's why the Insular Celtic Church had such a contentious relationship with the Catholic Church based out of Rome, is because the Irish just made up standing stones and had their legends on one side and the Latin legends on the other side. I mean, we always just did our own shit. And persists in my family understanding. It was taught to me. My mother taught me who Bridget was. She told me that that was her goddess. I tend to prefer Morrigan, just for um, my understanding. Um, I'm kind of a standing stone myself. I believe very deeply in the Morrigan, and I believe very deeply in Yeshua, the little brown-skinned Aramaic laborer from Galilee. I don't know you, Jesus, um, and I don't trust him. Um, I do believe in heaven. I do believe in God, but I don't believe in Yahweh or El. Yahweh was a storm god from Midian, and El was a city god from Ugarit. You got it. Um, I don't believe in. Anyways, you're all being sold like snake oil salesmen have been peddling bullshit for years. And it's not like, it's not like, like part of the reason so many nations and kings and kingdoms and princes and um, why they turned their people towards the Catholic Church was not just about warfare and conquest. It was about synecdochrism as well too. That's where we went wrong there and ossified and calcified. Because like the patron saints were based off of fucking pagan beliefs and fuck your pagan stuff, man. Like it's just based off of other people's beliefs. Like you're so fucking ideologically pure. It's just like don't trust anything that's too clean, man. That's just sickness. You won't survive the real world, or real heaven, or real hell, or you just won't fucking. And hell is full of killers and thieves. It's not full of pedophiles. Hell doesn't like pedophiles. Heaven doesn't like pedophiles. Nothing. And the animal kingdom likes pedophiles. Do you understand? Nothing in the animal kingdom likes pedophiles. Nothing. in the heavens or in the hells that I've ever walked or seen or talked to likes pedophiles. I don't know what happens, but I think it's pretty much jailhouse rules, motherfucker. You get into hell, you might as well be getting into fucking open population in jail. And you know what happens there? You might get a little shanky and accidentally stab the guy. Oops. I don't know how that happened. I must have tripped and fell and stuck a fucking shank in your throat. So, anyways, how would I understand that both heaven and hell would deal with pedophiles? They'd shank them in the throat. Full on. They'd let them bleed out. You're not going to heaven. You're not going to hell. You're being dragged out beyond the borders of creation into the chaos beyond that. Into the chaos from back to where you belong. No, your soul will never be reborn. Those are the words of God from what I hear. We'll suffer thieves, we'll suffer killers, we'll not suffer pedophiles. And it's time to change the whole rapey shit, man. And that's my opinion. That's my argument with God. The rapaciousness of humanity must come to an end. That's my jam. That's my argument. It's my cross to bear. I'm not into that shit. I have some basic respect for people, people's intelligence and agency. And I said people. You notice how I didn't make a fucking group out of that? I'm trying to follow Article 1 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights and just, follow that. I smoke the joint, so I'm kind of high, happy. World building, and while I'm sitting here talking, I got a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, so watch your prosperity gospel. That is heresy. A lot of American evangelicalism is heresy. Mormonism is heresy. Protestantism isn't. That's an old conversation. Orthodoxy isn't. Orthodoxy is where all this shit starts. And then it got calcified and ossified. It went its own direction. It doesn't accurately reflect its roots either. The same conversation can be happening in the Orthodox Church that I would be having in the Catholic Church. So, their theologians and philosophers can probably parse that out on their own terms. Jesus never came to North America, man. If Jesus showed up on the shores of America today, bad things would happen to him. I don't know if he'd be deported or killed. But, if I'm the little drummer boy, I'm warning him to stay the fuck away for now, man. Shit's not clear down here. Recon says stay home. Recon, do you have it for? Stay home. Don't come. Not yet. Ba-dum-ba-bum-bum. Anyways, I'm gonna make another coffee. And I need another cigarette. So this is what session 7. That got into nothing, but this is world building. I'm thinking about like all of this conversation. I'm thinking about the religions I'm expanding on in this world. So welcome to Aldara, old era.